Hey everybody, good day.
Hey Malcolm, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Apparently you can hear me too.
I can, loud and clear. I see Dawn on.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And it looked like Marion is remote. Is that correct, Marion?
I'm here.
Is in remote part somewhere, huh?
Well, it's on, so we don't want that. Are we not doing a?
Bert, are you out there?
Sir, yes, sir.
So are you going to chair the meeting then?
Yeah, unless you want to do it from there. I mean, you look pretty
No,
comfortable
that's fine.
sitting right there.
I'm
Right now,
still trying to get up the screens. I'll let you know when to start.
right
Okay.
now it's just
All
Rob and I, so
right. Oh, so I thought Malcolm was there. Oh, he's remote.
Yeah, I'm remote.
I know the feeling.
I think we can work it out. Just print it out. It's 50 pages. Guideline.
How come we?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I know it's them early.
Should
I
be
mean,
unclick,
sure.
so we can see.
I'm guessing probably
on.
do. Checking to do. I just skimmed through it. But I'll forward eligibility.
Okay, we are set.
Okay, Marion, did you want to do roll call first?
Okay, roll call. Not sure if we have a quorum, but I see Don. Commissioner Alter?
Yeah, Marion, I'm here. I should show up, I hope.
Well, we can hear you, so.
I see you,
Um,
Malcolm.
Commissioner Beals,
Here,
Vane, Commissioner Vane. Commissioner Loveridge, he's going to be absent tonight. Commissioner Nauman
I'm here.
and Chair Riggleman.
I'm here as well. So I think we're good.
Okay, we do
Okay.
have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Let's go to item 3, public participation. So public participation enables the public to address about an item that is not on the agenda. If you wish to address the commission, please state your name and address for the record. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item which is not listed on the prepared agenda. The commission members may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. Public comment should be limited to 3 minutes reading time. So do we have anybody that would like to have public participation about a non-agenda item? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any changes or amendments to the minutes as published?
this is Don. I have a couple of comments.
Okay, Don?
If I can find, hang on a second. So, under all business, there's reference to a comment that I made about data centers and the water and power consumption that they use related to the possibility of those potentially showing up in northern Arizona. It's under old business. It was actually an informational item for the chair and commission staff. And also the next to last sentence in that paragraph, it says, we know they can't use saline or salt water. That should read, we know they can use saline or salt water as opposed to fresh water.
Thank you, Don.
That's it.
All right. Any other amendments?
Yes, this is Rob Vane.
Yeah, hi, Rob. Go ahead.
Towards the bottom of page 5 of the copy I received, and a little below the section where Don Bills was commenting, there's a sentence that says, Robert Bain said council directed staff to seek funding for the Red Gap development. So does that constitute it? I think a couple of words were dropped there. I guess I'd like to see that sentence finished or completed to say, so does that constitute a commitment for development?
Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Yes. So the end of that sentence, I believe, should read something like, so does that, let's see. So does that direction from council constitute a commitment for development? Is that okay? Okay, thanks, Marianne.
Yep, that sounds good. Okay, with those friendly amendments, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as recently updated?
I'll move to approve the minutes. John Nauman.
Okay. Can I get a second?
A second from Rob Vane.
Thank you, Rob. And all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, so we carry. Thank you, everybody. And Marion, once again, thank you. It's I know that's a daunting task at times. Okay, so let's go to item number 5, new business. 5A is treatment facility master plan scope of services from Mac McNamara. So Mac, thank you so much. And this is going to be a very interesting topic and one we'll be wrestling with for years. So here we go.
All right, well, thank you. Good afternoon, Water Commission. Mac McNamara, Engineering Section Director for Water Services. I have Katie Vonyo here with our consultant with Hazen with us to help out in the presentation. We've got a handful of slides to go over the scope of our project here, and then, of course, we'll be available for questions after that. I did see Rob McCandless did join us as well. He is partnering. He works for Stantec. He's partnering with Hazen on this project as well. He's available for questions after the presentation. If we do have any. And I think with that, I'll hand it off to Katie.
Yep. Thanks, Mac. So as Mac mentioned, we'll really briefly go through, I'm going to start with the purpose behind, which I know that you've been eagerly awaiting this project. So it'll be a brief statement of what we're trying to do, the overview of what's included in the scope. I'll go through the schedule as we have it now and take any questions. So the purpose of this project is to address the near and long-term projects at both Rio de Flag Water Reclamation Facility and Wildcat Hill Water Reclamation Facility. I wanted to note that, you know, the Wildcat Hill specifically was identified in Flagstaff's 2025 strategic plan addressing plant capacity. Not only is the plant in condition that is probably in need of some attention and potential rehab and replacement, but also a lot of recent storms have tested the peak capacity at the facility, and so those will be addressed in this plan as well. So the way we've broken up the scope, I'll admit it's fairly robust. There's a lot we're covering. Just kind of going task by task, but without being boring about it. Task 100 on the left-hand side, it identifies all of the project management activities, but really I want to focus on the right-hand side of the screen, which is the project workshops, because there's quite a few of them. And the intent behind these workshops are every time we finish a major task in task 200, and that's the one I'll get to next, we'll have a workshop with staff to gain feedback and incorporate those comments and needs within the tech memo that we'll be producing. So we like to do this as a way to really engage staff and get attention drawn to each of the findings so that when we document something, we know that it's right. Put a check mark that we did
can
actually.
we pause for 1 second? I'm so sorry. It's just the
Sure.
slides aren't coming up. The slides aren't showing. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Good catch. So I can go back to, when I say left and right, you guys probably don't see the left and the right until now. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I've shown the workshops. I put a check mark because we did kick the project off last week. And the next task is we are actually right now coordinating when we're going to come up for the facilities condition assessment. So going into that section, we've broken up this project into kind of 3 major phases. Project initiation really serves to kick off the project, but then the way that we've broken it up is to comprehend, which is a lot of our exploratory tasks. Explore is exploring the newer technologies or potential replacement options. And then converge is when we make a decision, we have a recommendation to go forward with, and we start laying out how those are going to look in terms of a 5 and 10-year CIP. So this comprehend task is going to start with our facility assessment. I had mentioned that we're looking to start that next week. In 2022, 2021 maybe, was the biosolids master plan that did do a comprehensive assessment of the Wildcat Hill and Rio facilities. So we've gone ahead and gotten those raw files, and what we're going to do is update those base assets. That takes a lot of time out of the effort of going into the plant fresh in terms of just redocumenting everything. We have a lot of documentation, so we're really updating it at this point. So we'll evaluate all of the asset risks and history that's identified from that biosolids master plan for each. We'll also do a waste load review and projection analysis, understand what's coming into the facility and what we expect to see over the future. There's also a task to explore and document all of the current and any potential future regulatory requirements that we could foresee coming down the future, whatever that landscape may look like in regards to ADEQ. And both teams are working really closely with ADEQ on a lot of the regulations they're developing currently. Evaluation of the process treatment capacity as well as the hydraulic capacity. So there's a whole hydraulic analysis as well as utilizing biowind models to evaluate what each process is capable of doing under different conditions. Another large portion of this scope of work, which I won't go into the full basis of, is the SCADA and controls evaluation. That's probably, I want to say, 1/3 of the project, documenting, understanding, and recommending how to upgrade the SCADA and controls needs for both facilities.
Do you want questions as you go, or do you want questions held till the end?
That's a great question. That was in the middle of the presentation, which leads me to say, please ask questions throughout.
I have one quick question, which is, as I look at the tasks, this makes sense in terms of evaluating the functionality of the plant. Where, if anywhere, would be the task, the thought process around what do we want the plant to output at the end of this? In other words, what's the strategic purpose for the plant? Because I know I'm sure Commissioner Bain and Nauman are also wondering, are we going to start moving towards DPR, IPR? Is that a consideration? How does that get baked into this process to understand at the end of the day, is everything still going to be reclaimed water? Or are we looking to go 50-50 reclaim DPR? Where does that fall in this? Or is that a whole separate discussion?
You're a mind reader.
That's a great question, something that we've thought about many a times. And the answer is there's a few different pieces that go into this. So, we really start with the base plant first because that's going to tell us what our needs are. You may see a story where you have so much equipment to replace that it's not going to be cost effective to replace all of it. It might look towards a new plant. So that's kind of the first step, is looking at what you have and what needs to be replaced. That goes into an inventory of replacement. You also will be looking at those waste load projections. So what's going to be coming into the plant and how big does it need to be? And then kind of similar story with the future regulations. If you consider, your end use as driving what those future regulations are going to be looking at, that becomes another bucket. And so as I talk about kind of those three different drivers, and hydraulic capacity and process treatment go into that as well, you end up with this kind of multi-criteria decision analysis point where all of those factors lead into the decision, which actually goes into the explore phase. Because once we have what we need in terms of all of these different criteria, we start talking about, now what does that look like in terms of solutions? And so I think that's the point that you're getting at, is if our end goal were to be, we want this addressed, let's say in our water quality, then one of our options on the table as we start talking about alternatives will address that need specifically. And all of those come with an associated cost and associated siting, and that's all being done in the explore phase. So does that answer your question as I kind of make the segue from understanding what our baseline is, setting those goals, and then moving into this process evaluation to address those goals?
Yeah, I believe it. What I heard is it can show up in multiple places. I think from a water commission standpoint, we just wanted to be crystal clear that there is a discussion around what is the goal for the output of the plant, right? And that doesn't get lost in terms of just trying to evaluate or replace what we have today. And Commissioner Bain, Nauman, if you've got a different, or you want to take a little bit different tact on that, please feel free.
With a nice invitation like that, how can I refuse? Yeah, maybe just to add some words to what Kurt has already said. The goal might, or our question would be, is the mindset here that we're just going to continue to produce A+ reclaimed water for the next 50 years? Is that the goal of this project, or is there going to be in this explore phase that you referred to, is there going to be consideration of other alternatives other than just continuing to produce A+ reclaimed water?
I can hop in real quick here. We do have a task for alternative process evaluation within the scope, which I think will address what you're talking about. So we're going to look at 5 different applicable treatment technology at Wildcats and 1 at Rio.
And that will include what we've identified in the scope actually as advanced treatment technologies within that. And that would explore opportunities potentially beyond A+ that might address CECs. There's specific language in the scope around that.
I see. Since we haven't let you get very far yet, we're only on task 200 here. Does the explore phase then come after this? Or did I miss, where does the explore phase come?
Yes, so comprehend phase is going to be documenting all of our needs, setting our goals. Explore phase is going to be exactly what Mac just mentioned, which will be our alternative process evaluation, exploring our treatment technologies, what it takes to increase capacity as needed. Another big part of this, which, you know, I know we're talking about the liquid stream, but long-term solids disposal method is also part of this discussion. And I know that, you know, Rio is going to be having a solids solution very near term. But I think overall, you know, Wildcat is going to need some decision making as well. And then not only the improvements, but that overall, if this is our point that we're trying to get to, and this is the water quality that we're trying to get to, what do those alternatives look like? Commissioner Bills?
Thank you. I have a question. I think I was originally thinking in terms of task 230, future regulatory requirements, but maybe it's appropriate under task 260 as well. It has to do with, you know, thinking to the future in terms of how the wastewater stream is going to have to be treated to deal with PFAS and micro and nanoplastic particles. I had read a couple of papers not that long ago that indicated that there's a fairly cheap solution, particularly for plastics, where you add a binding agent to the water, something like calcite or calcium, and you boil the water. And when you boil the water, the plastics adhere to the calcium and precipitate out. Is that something that you potentially would be looking at as part of the treatment related to, you know, future plant wastewater stream?
We do have an item in our scope to evaluate specific PFAS removal technologies, but we haven't specified, and we'll have to discuss as a team which technology that might include.
Thank you.
There's only four tasks, so we're actually pretty close to the end, Rob.
Okay. I think you mentioned in your, in the time we've allowed you to talk so far.
Thank you.
That something like a third of the project is evaluating the existing plant. Did I misunderstand that?
Yes, so when I said a third, I was actually specifically referring to the SCADA and controls evaluation. And the only reason I shook my head is that's a big differentiator.
Okay, so, okay, maybe I didn't follow yet. Haven't followed yet. So is a third of the project evaluating the existing system, including the existing plant, including the SCADA system?
It probably works out to about that, yes.
I'm wondering about that just in the sense that in some conversations, some people have said, you know, Wildcat is needs to be in our past. Its future is a bulldozer. So are you approaching this from the viewpoint that potentially Wildcat can be resurrected by, or its life extended for another 50 years by selective replacements of equipment and refurbishment and so forth?
Yeah, so actually we see this a lot. We did this for Tempe specifically. They turned off their Kyrene facility for over 10 years and they wanted to turn it back online. And we had to go and look at every piece of equipment and decide, is it worth it to rehab the equipment and turn it back online? Or is it more affordable and more in line with your needs to do a whole new plant? So both we kind of take the same approach. You look at everything that needs to be replaced, and the story kind of tells itself. Again, it comes back to that multi-criteria decision analysis piece of it, where you see what the needs are and you see what it's going to cost, and you also have your goals of what are we trying to get to, and if just rehabbing the equipment won't get you there, and it's more effective long term and in line with your goals to build a new plant, then those decisions are made. But you look at it very holistically. So I can't tell you what the answer is going to be yet. We haven't gone through the full analysis, but we do intend to do it that way.
I see. And I gather, Shannon and staff, that that's the approach you recommend taking. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Bain, yes, that's correct.
Yes, I had a question too. So I saw this SCADA evaluation comes up towards the bottom of this slide here. And so do you have any base level of assumptions about what components you're keeping from the current system? How do you evaluate what if in 5 years the design of sewage treatment plants completely has nothing related to what we have right now? How do you handle that?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Well, we have a set of structures in a traditional wastewater treatment plant like at Wildcat, right? What if that plant is completely different? That the technology advances rapidly, amazingly enough, could happen. We know there's stuff in Europe that is very different than what's going on here in the United States. How do you take that into account?
You know,
And then because I was looking at SCADA, if you're evaluating SCADA stuff, you need to know what your technology is that you're going to be putting into that's what kind of prompted the question.
yes, and thank you for the question. I see where your mind is going, and I can tell you that this is not an abnormal case. Most facilities in the valley also have this same conundrum, if you will, where a lot of times maybe your SCADA and controls equipment is a little further behind than the technologies you might be considering. So typically when we go out and evaluate the alternative treatment technologies, that includes a component of what are the SCADA and control needs for that process technology, and then what's the lift for the facility to get to that point. And so that also comes into the decision if you're saying, oh, we'd really like to go throw something out MBR at this facility, what's it going to take to get there? And those are documented and part of the decision process. So cool. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I was here. So the other part to this alternative process evaluation is twofold. There will be a base assessment of the staffing at the two treatment facilities, identifying the staff levels and identifying additional needs to operate this facility as it stands, but also staffing not only as the plant increases capacity, but also as we look at alternate technologies. So again, I don't want to put this in your heads, but if I went to the MBR example, that staffing level might look different than a staffing level for a traditional conventional activated sludge plant. So they're looked at in both ways. Okay. And then the last two tasks is evaluating funding opportunities, federal grant opportunities to help support the project needs over time, and also determining financing needs over time. I know that you just went through a rate study, so we won't, redo that work, but just understanding, as we look into the future at what might be the needs at that plant, if there is a need for a future rate structure that might align better with that. And then finally, the master plan itself, which is a compilation of technical memorandums, which I apologize for leaving out of the discussion of task 200, but every major task in 200 ends with a technical memorandum documenting the results of that task. Through those workshops, we get feedback and comments that will be incorporated into the final master plan. What we like to see, and we've worked with this, with city staff to determine this, is the master plan will be a executive summary that includes all of the immediate actions and recommendations, and then also is concise and actionable throughout. And the tech memo serves as backup information. So what we want to do is have a useful plan for you that's easy to find the information that's needed over the period of time. And then we'll have backup documentation for how we did our waste loading projections or what alternatives we analyzed in detail. Did we look at this quantity or at this process technology? Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions on that?
Any questions?
You guys just knocked them all out in the last slide.
Yeah. There was an avalanche in the middle. Yes.
That's great. That, you know, that's what we're here for. So I'll just briefly cover the schedule. What it looks like right now is over the next 2 to 3 months, we have quite a bit of work going on. We'll be up at the facility doing an evaluation. We'll be doing our waste loading projections. I know Rob and his team have already started getting to work on that part. The regulatory outlook and all of our bio and modeling and hydraulic evaluation take place through October. And each of those, as I mentioned, ends with a tech memo. What we're really trying to get at is the alternative evaluation is going to be fairly comprehensive. So we wanted to give ourselves substantial time to get that done. So you'll see that we're going to be kicking that off as soon as we get an idea of what our capacity and equipment needs are. Evaluate all our alternatives all the way through March. Another driver for that is as you start approaching the winter months, schedules get really difficult come November, December timeframe because of the holidays. So we wanted to make sure we had time to get with staff and work with each other to get findings that, you know, we really need out of this. And the staffing and training task, once we've developed those alternatives, will take place shortly after that. Where we're working against, you know, as I mentioned, how we are looking at the schedule is the plan will be completed by June 2025. So that's the date we've been working back from. And each of those tasks leading up to will get us to that point. Questions?
May I? Yes. Going back to the first of the questions from the group, where in this list does this discussion of what's the goal for the plant, where does that discussion occur here? Is it, you know, whether the goal is to continue to produce A+ reclaimed water or something other than that?
It's probably going to take place right around the time we've wrapped up our projections and process evaluation, hydraulic analysis, mostly because it's really important that we have a thorough understanding of what's going on there. So I would say end of October, early November timeframe. Yeah.
Is it fair to say, it sounds sort of evaluate what we think is coming in? So then we can actually make a more intelligent decision on what might be going out. So, but you can't really do that till you do that full analysis on not only liquid but solids, and then you've got a much more educated, or at least hopefully educated process to get you to, okay, if we want to then do just A+, here's where we're at. If we want to do 50-50, if we want to go higher, 50-50 being A+ and some sort of potable. That sounds like what you're saying, right? Or is that wrong?
I think that sounds like what I'm saying.
Okay.
Can you repeat the statement actually?
Well, I think what I'm hearing is you need to go through the waste load projections to understand what we're going to be having coming in both from liquid and solids. And from that, you can then model, if we're just doing A plus, this is what it might look like in terms of need of plant. If we're going to go A plus for 50% of the output and something potable for 50%, then the plant needs to start to look like this, and here's the cost associated with that. But the step one is really getting the projection of what's coming in. Yes?
Yes. It's a baseline and then a projection of what the future holds in terms of what's coming in flow wise and loading wise.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Rob, I see your hand. Rob McCandless.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I think this relates to the past two, the last two questions. And one of the key things there is when we get through the regulatory outlook, that is going to define the must-haves in terms of product water quality. And there are also wants. There's the community have to make a choice of whether to go beyond that regulatory, requirement for any particular reason. And I'm being, specifically, I'm speaking to things like potable reuse, right? That's not a must-have. That's not a regulatory mandate. That's a choice. But we can define those, and those parameters are really going to drive a lot of what the process technology will be.
Well, there's kind of two ways to look at this. You can look at it, well, we're basically going to put in a new plant in similar design to what we currently have. And then we can improve the treatment of the A plus water coming out of that plant. So that's one way of looking at it. Or you can put in an entirely different plant that does a number of things and you end up differently, and you end up having superior water, which you can use various advanced treatment techniques, maybe not as many needed, maybe more, depending upon what you do. I guess my question is, if you're trying to decide what alternative techniques you're going to compare to, how are you going to decide what alternative techniques you're going to compare to? Is that based upon what the water department wants you to look at? Are you going to go out and do a search of what's going on in various places? How does that happen?
A little bit of both. It's a great question. A lot of it's driven by discussions with Mac and Shannon and plant staff on the goals, what are we trying to produce, what's our choice on the path we're taking. And then the other, when you do start looking at these different technologies, you start with what we call a world of options. That includes kind of anything under the sun that fits within, this environmental landscape. A lot of times we look at technologies that have been implemented in the States before, but again, that's all discussions with Shannon and Mac on, what the city's priorities are. So.
Yeah, a couple of examples. I've for some reason in this past week, I've had 3 discussions with people out in the community about water. And all 3 of them said they think there should be more treatment of the water before it leaves the plant. A plus water should be improved. We've had a long-running problem satisfying the needs of our Native American community and the use of reclaimed water up at Snowball. I mean, the question is, could we improve the quality of that water going up to Snowball so it resolves that issue? And that's a major issue. None of the tribes are at all happy with what's going on there right now. None of them have signed on to reclaimed water being used up there. And I'm a skier. I love to ski, but I still think it's really important, they were the first ones here, that we somehow need in this project to deal with that issue. So as a water commissioner and listening to what people are saying, I would say that's an imperative for what it's worth.
Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing, this is Kurt, sorry. I think what I'm hearing is, look, we need to understand what's coming in, then we need to project out what we think the regulatory environment's going to be, which then sets the baseline, because you have to comply with the regulatory as a municipality. And then anything we want to do above that, there's options potentially to go above that. But it's what do we think we're going to have to wrestle with in terms of input? What do we think we need to do to comply, bare basic minimal compliance? And then we can go above that. And that's,
That-
yeah.
That's what I was trying to convey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I hear you about snowball water quality. I think I've had some interesting discussions with the snowball team about well, anyway, I'll leave that one alone. There was a potential solution for potable and everybody bailed on it the last second. So let's just leave it at that. So we'll have to work through that political issue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is Rob Vane again. If the study does go down the route of looking at DPR options, then in my mind, this quickly becomes related to what we heard about last month with the Red Gap Ranch discussion, because people will want to know, if we talk about DPR, they'll want to know a delivered cost of water coming from that versus other options such as Red Gap Ranch. And Councilmember Sweet in the room will be faced with the question, oh, should we develop Red Gap Ranch or should we do DPR? And I think one of the bottom line figures you'll be looking for is, okay, which is most economic? What is the delivered cost of water from each alternative? And so I guess I'm bringing that up in the spirit that I hope under this alternative evaluation, it gets as far as not just estimating the cost of a plant, but the cost of the delivered product. So it can be compared with other alternatives on the freshwater side or on the potable water side.
Great comment, and I apologize, I'm smiling, but I did listen to the Water Commission meeting last week or last month on Red Gap, so I am familiar with the questions.
Yeah,
Well,
and
it's,
we've talked.
any study you get
Right.
into like this, it has so many tails to it, and I think that's a very important tail to this one, that inevitably we'll compare the results of this with, the Red Gap Ranch option. So.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Yeah, and
thanks,
we've had extensive discussions with Aaron, the team about, look, ultimately, the department, in my opinion, has an obligation, a duty to look at and create and collect as many potential water sources as possible. Right. And that could be Red Gap Ranch, it could be this, it could be dehumidifiers in the sky up on the mountain that pipe water down. I don't know. But have those things lined up. And then there's a trade space to look at volume, cost, quality, and when do we need that to all come online versus the 100-year plan. And I know Aaron, I'm going to speak for you a little bit. I mean, we've both she and not Commissioner Jones, sorry, Director Jones have had a long discussion about, yeah, that's exactly what the team's going to be doing. What's the most economic, functional provision of water, aligning with the 100-year plan, knowing that we need as many sources as possible as a mountain city in the West, right? So yeah, that's a key function for the team.
Erin, were you going to add something? I'd assume not if you went off camera.
Nope, I just wanted to show that I was listening, but Kurt and team, everyone, the conversation is exactly where I would have gone. So thank you.
Interestingly, a month ago at this meeting and the discussion about Red Gap Ranch, the Bureau of Reclamation also said they're going to be coming up with numbers of that sort. So there's an integration component to this. You'll be looking at these numbers, and I gather Jacobs Engineering and the Bureau of Reclamation will be looking on the Red Gap Ranch side. So comparability of those numbers is important, and that may be a touch point you want to consider through the course of your study.
Yep. Yeah, we recognize that. I think, I know Katie and I recognized that years ago when we did the original study that we needed to have a common baseline to compare those. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, the Bureau of Reclamation will be interested in the wastewater, wastewater volumes available, you know, as a water resource. So they will be looking at those numbers as well as alternatives to Red Gap Ranch. So at some point, the synergy will come together on the water planning topic.
Going to Red Gap Ranch, I noticed that the final project estimate included advanced treatment, specifically reverse osmosis treatment to lower the various contaminants, not organic contaminants, but or man-made, but whatever. I can't remember
Mineral-
which salinity there. I can't
PDX,
remember
yeah.
which one was over the limit. There was one when I looked at the thing that it was a little bit high. And that would, it seems, would that be a factor you would be taking into account if we're all going to already planning on having to do RO? If we use Red Gap Ranch water, would the two functions somehow merge?
That's a whole, another approach within the advanced treatment realm, yes, and we've had those discussions before with Flagstaff. As you know, as you go through use of water into the sewer shed back to the plant, you will see an increase in TDS. So there is some threshold of what's going to be acceptable as that begins to rise. So all of that to say, anytime you look at advanced treatment options, you typically look at it in terms of what the existing water supply is, and your recommendations look to meet that as close as possible. So long-winded answer to say, typically, yes, you would include some evaluation of whether or not you need RO.
The other thing is we know what the PFAS is. The EPA has finally come out with some hard regulations with regard to PFAS compounds, and that's for drinking water. As far as released water, reclaimed water going out into the environment, it's kind of in limbo at the moment. And we know we have PFAS compounds at a low level in our reclaimed water right now. My question is, I mean, you got to get out your crystal ball and predict what will happen. But say if they decide we're going to regulate water coming out of the wastewater treatment plant, that's going to require some kind of advanced treatment. I actually just got a grant request for a reviewer. I'm not going to do it, but that is looking for techniques to remove PFAS and other man-made synthetic organic compounds. So, things are changing in this rapid environment. I look at your timetable and I'm going, wow, that's to make a finalized plan in a year, a little over a year. I'm going, wow, that's going to be really fast to deal with all the change that's happening right now. But my question is, I guess it relates to all that. Rob and I are both in this thing called the Flagstaff Water Group. And we've been preaching that we need to do some kind of treatment before we do aquifer recharge with A+ water. Even though it's not required, we think it's important to do. Will the treatment of A+ water before it's being used for aquifer recharge be one of the factors you're thinking about?
That'll come into play in our regulatory outlook phase as we look down the road for what's going to be needed. Well, as we look into our crystal ball of what we think's going to be needed. And that's where those conversations will take place about what's needed to be addressed for the use. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
All right. Well, questions? Just kidding. Yeah. Well,
Too
thank you for
funny.
your time. I don't know if Robbie, you had anything else you wanted to add, but
I'll save it. I really enjoyed the input and the information, and we look forward to, putting together a plan that, you're going to be happy with.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Gene. It's critical in terms of where we're going to head as a city, right? So, okay.
Actually, one more, if I may, Kurt.
Go ahead. Yes.
I'm curious, have Hazen and Stantec collaborated together before on similar projects, or is this a new development for the two companies to collaborate?
Rob, that's a great question.
It
We
is.
have, yes, we have. We actually just came off of a project for City of Goodyear that was looking at expanding their wastewater treatment facility. And at the time, they were looking at what it might take to go DPR in the future. So our evaluation of technologies included the thought process of what technologies make sense to help get us to that point. So, and then prior to that, as you know, Commissioner Vane, Rob and I have worked together for about 10 years now. So just between the two of us, we bring that kind of tenure as well.
Got it. In the division of labor on this project, does Hazen have one particular aspect and Stantec another, or can you shed a little light on how the division of labor?
Yes, I can. The comprehend phase is led by Hazen, but taken on by both Hazen and Stantec staff. I believe Stantec has the hydraulic and hydraulic evaluation and the projections of loadings and flow. Hazen has the condition assessment task, SCADA and controls, and process tech, or the process capacity evaluation, the bio and modeling. As we go into the explore phase, we split it up kind of evenly because there will be some modeling of the different technology alternatives. Stantec does have the regulatory outlook phase. As we start, and they're part of the alternatives analysis as well. And then Stantec pretty much leads the funding and financing task, and the master plan is a compilation of both teams.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move into item 6. There is none. So let's go to 7, informational items 2 from the chair, commission members, or staff. Anybody have anything for informational purposes? Okay. And then we can move to item 8 if there's no other items.
I do have one question.
Okay.
There was a grant out to do biochar and some other stuff in the city. Water Department was working with sustainability, and from what I understand, we found out a few weeks ago that the grant was not funded. And I was wondering if it is public, is it open for public review to look at the reviewers' comments to find out what the problem was with the grant, or if the water commissioners could see that information as to what the problem with the grant was. Usually you get some good insight from reviewer comments, so.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Newman, I don't have that information, but I'll research that to see you are correct. We do know that that was a very competitive grant, so it may not necessarily be what was wrong with the grant application, but what was different. But I will see if we get some comments back on that review. I will be meeting with sustainability, and I'll bring that back before I'll get that to you.
The other thing is, what is the status of the earmark is an earmark out to get some biochar technology too? Is there a status on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Nauman, that's continuing to make its way through the approval committees. I would ask not that you hold it to me, but I do believe that it did pass the House committee and is now moving to the Senate that is on break. I think there's still some subcommittees that's still being reviewed, but ultimately right now it is still within that legislation, and we're still monitoring it as it progresses through. And still anticipating that may be through October before we actually know what's getting written into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, well, with nothing else, we'll adjourn the meeting at 4:53 and thank you everybody for the presentations. And again, to Marion for the minutes, and we will see everybody next month. Sounds great.